G'day. Today we're doing a transmission service on a Nissan Navara 2008 model. It's got the RE5RO5A 5-speed transmission in it. Stick on these is down here. You got to take off the little 10mm bolt to get to it, and it is a pretty tight fit, all the hoses and everything to get your hand down there. So we're just going to suck the oil out through the dipstick. We just ran into a bit of a problem. If you have a look on the dipstick, there's a little bit of rust here, and it's actually got what's called the milkshake, where there's water getting into the transmission fluid. As usual, we've just sucked the oil out, or you can remove the drain plug. Makes it a little bit safer to drop the oil and less messy. And as usual, we're just going to blow out around the pan rail there and take the pan off. The pan off it, and you can see that the oil is thoroughly contaminated with water. So he's got to put a bypass oil cooler on this, or possibly change the radiator. And these transmissions take the Nissan Type J fluid, or any compatible transmission fluid that will do that. And this is the Tritec lubricant page. We'll just have a look at the data sheet for that Nissan Type J. And these actually, if you have a look, this oil will cover the Nissan 402 Matic D, J, K and S fluids. So you want to make sure you get the right one in there, or a compatible one anyway. Done the service on the transmission, but what I've also done, if you have a look here, it's probably leaking through that heat exchanger. So what I've done, I've taken the hose off the cooling line and just put it in there. And up here, if you have a look on the Navaras, I've got a big transmission oil cooler. Instead of it going through the cooler and through the radiator heat exchanger, what I've done is I've bypassed the radiator completely and just ran this hose and put it back into the pipe there. You can see I've just put the clamp on there. So we've vacuumed the cooling line out, and we've put some new fluid in there, and now we've taken it for a run, and I'm just going to drain the oil on it again to try and get as much of that water out of the transmission as possible. 19mm drain plug on these, just because you can still see that it's got a fair bit of water still in it, and it's a little bit hot now. So we might have to do this a couple of times to try and get as much of the water out as possible. You can see it's that milkshakey colour. It should be a nice pinky red. Now if this transmission didn't have an oil cooler, we would have fitted another oil cooler to it and completely bypass the radiator. So this bloke's lucky he's already got one fitted on there, which is quite a large one, but it's important to bypass the radiator. So the only way he's going to get water in it now is if he pours it in, or if he floods the vehicle, gets above the breathers on the transmission. So we're just going to drain all that out, as much as we can out of the transmission, and then we're going to disconnect this hose that we put on here and put the vacuum pump on there and try and suck out as much oil as we can, and that will hopefully suck a bit out of the torque converter as well. And there we've got the vacuum pump just hooked into that cooling line there, and the other one's just that goes to the cooler there. You can see there's still fluid coming out of it. So we'll probably have to, we've done 2 oil changes on it, but it's still quite milky, so might probably need to do another couple of oil changes to get the transmission fluid looking reasonable. Now we're on our third, this is our third refill. 9 litres of fluid after we vacuum out all the oil out of the cooling lines and drain the can. You can see it's in a pain in the bum spot right down there. And each time we refill it's 9 litres, so this is 27 litres, and we'll just see what the colour of the fluid looks like. So here we've got the first oil change here that had the milkshake in it. This is the second one, and I'm just about to do the third oil change now. We'll see what the fluid looks like. It's a little bit hard to see, but there's still, that one's still fairly milky. That's the colour of the oil at 18 litres, or the second, after the second oil change. So we'll just see what it looks like after we take this one for a run. Take it for a run where we stop and start a few dozen times, go through all the gear changes, first to second, second to third, third to fourth, and fourth to overdrive or fifth gear as well, just to try and circulate any oil that might be under the pistons or in the little oil galleries anywhere. Now you can see this transmission's actually only done 133,000 kilometres, and the oil cooler has gone in the radiator, so it's quite scary actually. Not sure why that's happening at such a low mileage, but anyway, we're going to take it for a bit of a run and see what the oil condition looks like on the third drain. I believe we'll probably have to do it at least 5 times, 9 litres every time. Just been for a long test drive, stopping and starting and changing through all the gears manually, including reverse, trying to just circulate it right through. So we're on the third oil change now. I'll just see what it looks like. It looks very similar to the second oil change. Might be a little bit darker, but it looks like we're probably heading to about 5 oil changes before we get it anywhere near being completely rid of the water and coolant in the transmission fluid. There we go, we've got first oil change when it came in, second, third, and that's the one we're aiming to get to. That's the clean fluid. So it's just draining on this one now. It's a little bit hard to see, but you can still see that it's quite milky. So completely bypassing the cooler that's built into the radiator. So it's easy to do, and if you do need to put it back, it's quite easy to just return to how it was. These transmissions also do have a temperature sensor in there that won't allow it to lock up until it gets to a certain temperature. So if you're in colder climates, it just might take a little bit longer to get to that fuel economy mode of the torque converter locking up. So we're just going to again hook up the vacuum line, let this drain for as long as until it stops coming out, and I believe we'll probably need to do another couple of oil changes. and you can see the oil coming through the vacuum line there. Okay, number 4 oil change. We'll just see what it looks like. It's looking a lot better now. You can actually see through the, a little hard to see there, but you can see through it. Where did I have that camera? It's almost got that pinky red colour now. So possibly one more change will be perfect. There we have it. Got number 1 when it came in. So 1 oil change, 2 oil changes, 3 oil change, or the 4th oil change. And you can see that it's nearly back to that pinky. That's the new stuff there. 1 more change should do the trick. So that's what I mean. You need to do it at least 5 times. Change your oil 5 times for it to get anywhere near the clean oil change. Now, a little bit hard to see on the camera here because there's a light on it, but it's a lot cleaner here. You can still see the milkiness in that one a little bit. You can hardly see the milkiness in there, but it is still a completely different colour to this one. So 1 more change should do the trick. This one, just to get a comparison. And there's the current one. You can actually see there's still like little lines through it, so that can mean that there's still is a little bit of water through it. But I'm suspecting that when we suck the oil out of that cooling line again, there, you can actually see through the fluid now. So it's nearly at a acceptable level for the condition. And there we have it. We've done all the oil changes, which is basically 5 oil changes. This is the one here that the vehicle came in with. So we've done 1 lot of oil. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and we've got to refill it. So 5 lots of oil. We managed to get out on this particular transmission at 9 litres each time with the vacuum pump. The transmission holds, when it's completely empty on a dry fill, 10.5 litres of fluid. So it's only left a tiny little bit of fluid in there that is actually being diluted each time we change, or freshened up with the transmission fluid each time we change the oil. So the reason why I like to do when you've got a milkshake situation in the transmission this way is because of the size of the pistons in some of these clutch packs, oil will actually remain underneath the piston. The way these pistons work is there's a little bleed hole there. So when it's applied, the oil will push it up, and then as it's released, the springs that push here will push the piston back, and the oil will bleed out through that little orifice there. Sometimes I have a little check ball in there. So what happens when we're driving it, these pistons will be working and cleaning up that fluid as well. On some of these machines, the transmission flushing machines that you can buy for hundreds or thousands of dollars, you do an oil change, but none of these things are being applied thoroughly as compared to when you're driving the vehicle. If you're doing it just idling in neutral or in park, you're not going to have the benefit of it actually moving or circulating around as much as when you're actually driving the vehicle. So that's why we like to you know, hook up a vacuum pump, take out as much oil as we can, and do it that way. So basically you use about the same amount of transmission fluid to get it to a respectable condition. In this situation we change the oil 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're going to refill it. So that's 9 times 5, 45 litres of fluid, which is pretty much very similar to what the flushing machines would use anyway in this situation. If not more, it might even use a little bit more by the time you realise that the fluid's coming through fairly clean. And it's a little bit tricky to get the oil level right because the dipstick's right down there, and you have it at operating temperature, which is basically 60 to 80 degrees, and it should be at the top mark. See, it's at the top mark, just above that. Get out the focus. It's where my thumb is there, end of my thumb. And now that we've got it all to the right oil level, we put the 10mm, it's got a 10mm head on it, and you can just see the end of my finger there where it goes on. It's a little bit tricky. It's also important not to overfill or underfill these transmissions.